This is good though because we haven't had a lot of technical difficulties in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting this mystery technology sorted out is highly on brand for us.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Here we go. All right, guys. Welcome to the Big Ambition Podcast. I am your host, Adam, joined as always by Mr. Ben Simonak. And Ben, we're sitting here multitasking, putting stuff together for the show. I am trying to screenshot this crap, and you made the comment that it's supposed to be relatively easy on a Mac device, but apparently I'm a bit of a Luddite here and don't know what I'm doing. But we'll get it all hammered out here by the end of the show, and I won't be able to pay attention to anything, but it's all good because we'll stumble our way through this. But anyways, man, how have you been? What is new? And how's the diet and training going?
Man, been pretty good recently. Had the solo keto interview last week, so that was incredibly nerve-wracking because it's like, oh great, now I got to just talk about meat for like 45 minutes to an hour. But Gormy is a great interview, great guy. We actually talked for probably 30 minutes after the podcast was done, just about his plans and what he's going through, and really cool guy to talk to. Can't wait till we get him back on and you get to hear from him and you get to talk to him. Must be like a Michael thing where they just go and talk for, a couple hours on end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't get to listen to all of it yet, but little bits and pieces while I was editing and posting and stuff like that. Did you learn anything that you didn't already know about keto? Did you find yourself like I did when we were talking about fat acceptance or fat shaming, where you started to maybe shift your beliefs or anything like that? Or what'd you think overall?
Yeah, honestly, I stayed away from the keto talk primarily because that's not Gormy's big story. Like his story, yes, it is keto right now. But like he said, he was at 540 pounds. He went down to 210. He went back up to 480, went back down. Now he, as of today, is under 450. And he's just had an incredible road. And talking about the different perspective when you're that weight, he said the planning involved in everyday life to be that heavy is incredible. He's like, okay, it's because it is an addiction at a certain point. Where is my next meal coming from? Do I need to stop somewhere on the way if I'm going from my house to work? How many places can I stop in my commute to get donut, coffee, food, bagel, whatever it is? At work, do I have enough food there? Did I bring a lunch? Am I going out for lunch? Am I going to be able to have a midday snack? It's things like that where you don't realize how much effort it takes to be that size because it rules your life. And I think in our fat acceptance episode, I know, like I said, I've dulled my stance on a lot of things. I'm not such a hard line. There's a lot of gray, and that's what he was saying. It's like, yeah, we know we're fat. We know it's tough, but sometimes the addiction takes over, and he said it's just like there's a monster inside of him waiting to come out. So there was a lot to reconsider in the whole process of, these people are, yes, they are killing themselves with food, but there's a whole other side of it than just I'm hungry, I'm eating, that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I can relate to that a little bit, being 300 pounds or whatever, but nothing like, I guess I never really did think about it like that, because I mean, there was things that I would avoid doing and things that would kind of irritate me, being that size, but it's got to be a whole different world when you're 500 plus, and just physically things that you can't do. And I saw a post from him about your bones bending and things like that. And things that he has to deal with now that's just a result of being that big. So that's something to think about.
Right. And it was crazy because the first weight loss he had, almost jokingly, he stated it this way. He's like, well, I started losing weight because my car got stolen. He worked at a residence hall at a college, and he had to work in an office building, but he got to live on campus, and the office was 100 yards away from his residence. So he would drive to work every day, which is across the street, and his car got stolen. He had to plan out a route where he could stop in secluded areas, as he said. He's like, well, okay, I can make it 20 yards to the next alcove where I can tuck myself away and breathe for a little bit. Then I can go another 20 yards before I have to get outside. So I can take a break here. I can walk across the street. There's a bench across the street, so I can sit down there for a little while. And just the physical demands that are put on him, well, put on anyone at that weight. Like I said, it's incredible. It's an absolutely wild story. And if you haven't listened, listen to it. If you have listened, listen again, because it's one of those where we can keep going back and realizing something different every time.
Yeah. So next time that we talk to him, do you think it's going to be something where you want to get into more of the ins and outs of keto, or not really? Or what do you think? Are you still not interested at this point?
I have had enough research thrown at me, I believe. I have been force-fed enough research. And Gormy said that he's done every kind of keto there is, and he's not really, 100% there. And he said off air, he's like, I have told people not to do it before. I have, talked people out of jumping right in. I've told people to do their research. And that's something that I really respect in a person with a platform like his, where you are a relatively prominent figure in the keto community in some circles. And the fact that you have the gumption to tell people, stay away if you haven't done your research, or discuss this with your doctor. It's a pretty cool thing to hear a voice like that in that circle say, hey, this might not be for you. Make sure you know what you're doing before you get into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, even myself, who, I always I fall back or resort back to keto just because it's what I know, or, just call it what it is. It's a way for me to reduce my calories, and it's just easy and convenient for me because it's the foods that I like. It's easy to prep for. I can grab, a handful of almonds and some beef sticks and cheese, and I'm good to go. You know what I mean? It's not having to measure out all the rice or beans or whatever it may be. It's just easy for me, and I think, and I hope that that's something we've kind of hammered home here, is like, it's not the be all end all. You want to be healthy, you want to be optimal, get to an optimal body weight, and you do that by reducing your calories. It's less in, more out. So whatever your avenue might be to get there, be it keto or a flexible dieting, or high protein, high carbs, low fat, whatever, just be optimal for yourself and for your own lifestyle. I hope we've conveyed that enough. So
yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy. I think that was his wording. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah. And to take this into our own update, I haven't been perfect, and my scale's not moving like I wanted it to, but and that's definitely the best way of putting it. It's simple, but it's not easy, and I have all of these things going on, and it becomes so easy for me to grab some burritos or to eat a handful of chips or pretzels or whatever it might be. It's convenient, and I haven't planned it ahead enough, and I keep finding myself doing that to the point of the number's not moving like I wanted it to. So the training's going great. It's probably one of the first times in recent memory that I'm not training in a caloric deficit, so that's kind of cool. The things I've been able to do. But yeah, it's something that I need to consider and I need to work a little bit harder at. So Yeah, there's that. But how are things going for you on a personal level as far as, your training and your upcoming race and stuff like that? We haven't talked about it for a couple weeks.
Oh, it's been going good. I still despise running and cardio as a concept. My what is it? The greater trochanter, whatever the femoral bone you rest on when you're cycling, is very uncomfortable for long sits in the saddle. I'm still kicking around the idea of doing a longer cycling race in June, either like 30 or 60 miles. So it's good to get on that, do some cycling, especially for the 400. And I've been doing sprints on the treadmill, or at least a Tabata-like interval where I've been going 30 seconds at 9 miles an hour, 30 seconds off, 30 seconds on, off, all at like a 2 or 3% incline. So you're kind of hustling at that point, and at 30 seconds, I'm done. But there were a lot of times where I've caught myself just yelling at myself in my head to get me going, and it's worked. I can talk myself into things pretty well, and as much as it sucks, which it absolutely does, I know it's going to suck a lot more if I fail again. So,
right, yeah,
it's yes, suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of defeat, one of those things. And I am trying to be more disciplined. I know I've really reeled it back in on the beer consumption, which is my Achilles heel. I think at trivia I only had one beer. At let's see, this weekend I only had two, which normally I'd have 3, 4 on Friday, 3, 4 on Saturday, and went out to eat yesterday. Got a hamburger, got some fries, which aren't good, but I just drank water with it, so it's like, all right, there I go, saving few hundred calories and help the muscles recover a little bit better. And I had all that delicious spicy food, which they say burns more calories, which I think is complete bullshit. But I guess running to the toilet like 3 times today is getting my sprints in and all that. Yeah, when they put 3 peppers on the menu, you should take that as a warning sign. But I didn't. So yeah, it's a new barbecue restaurant by us called Smoke to the Bone, and they have their hottest hot sauce is made with Carolina Reapers, and it's called Shit and Blood. And then they made a hamburger that is just loaded with jalapenos, and I think there are like Reapers on that too, as well as the Reaper sauce. And it's the Hellfire Burger. And I ordered it, and they're like, "Oh, do you know there's a challenge involved with this?" I'm like, "No, I was just going to eat it because it looked spicy and delicious." They're like, "Yeah, if you eat this in less than 10 minutes, you get your picture on the wall, and I guess I get a T-shirt with it too."
Okay.
So I ordered it. My buddy ordered it, and originally wasn't planning on doing the challenge, but it gets there, and it's just like, 3rd-pound patty, got a bunch of jalapenos on it, got some cheese, and some of that Carolina Reaper hot sauce. I'm like, I think if I can get this all down in about 3 minutes, I won't hurt too much to swallow. And sure enough, 3 minutes later, that thing was gone. And I was just crying to myself in a very public place because it was extremely hot. But then I had some coleslaw, washed it down. It was all good. So that was, that was my week in review. And then my Thursday episode, I think I got a few people that enjoyed that, which I don't know if you got the chance to listen to that.
I did not get to. I know you said you had a little bit of a joke in there, but I did not get to hear said joke. So do you want to explain it to me now, or what do you think?
I'll save it till next week. Those of you that haven't caught it up on it, I'll let you catch up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really designed for, well, let's see. Yeah, I'll hold off on that. If you haven't listen to it. Let me know how you like it, because I enjoyed doing it a lot.
Okay. All right, we can wait. We can wait, but I like it. I
Just
like
living up to my initials there.
So, all right. Well, with all that, is there anything else it's been a minute, so is there anything else we need to cover before we switch gears here?
Let's see. You said you are finished with your phase 1 of your education.
Yes. Yes. So, the semester is divided up into spring 1, spring 2. It wasn't like that back when I was in school, so that's kind of new for me. Had 3 classes, spring 1, and they were not overwhelming, but they were challenging in that there was a large amount of work that I had to do. And that while trying to keep up with working every day, and then, all through wrestling season, basically, had that going on. So it was a lot, and it was kind of overwhelming at times and frustrating, and then trying to do it all online, which I wasn't used to, and keeping up with the syllabus and following the instructions was kind of challenging for me. But yeah, we finished up this week. So I had 3 classes in my phonics class, which was supposed to be the toughest one, and I was warned about it from guys that I knew, or one guy specifically who had already had this instructor and everything. He was in the class with me. He was just sharing horror stories about it. I got a 94% in that, and then
claps.
Thank you. I had a diversities class. I can't think of the entire long drawn out name, but got a 94 in that. And then in my adolescent and childhood development class, ended up with a 92%, which I just told you about. Me frantically upload my assignment last night, 24 hours late. So yeah, first half of the semester in grad school, managed straight A's. I've got another class, spring 2 semester, which starts tomorrow, which I'll show the camera the book here, if you can see that. I can't. Let me pull my screen up here.
Yeah.
So
I really have to teach reading.
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at here for next semester. All while still going through this, and then working my way through this.
Ooh, there you go.
Did you have
just some light reading?
Yeah. Did you have this one when you were in school?
I did not.
Okay. Yes. An entire what is it here? It's got to be. This is great radio, by the way. Entire how many pages were 400 pages on nothing but periodization. So seems like we could have probably wrapped that up a little bit sooner than 400 pages on periodization. But anywho, we're going to be
change things up.
Yes, do things different. Are your athletes in season? Don't do as much. Are they out of season? Do more. Are they close to season? Go run. There you go.
Can't wait till you're finished with that book, and then we can do an entire maybe like 6-7 week series on periodization, and get everyone just very into it. We could figure out how to periodize this podcast. We could, do like during the Packers season, we'll just keep it 20-minute episodes, like nice and easy. Just get it in, get on the board. Off season, we'll go 3-4 hours straight.
Yeah, exactly. And so I still have the essentials of strength training and conditioning to finish up. Then I've got, I think I'm over preparing for the exam, but it is what I don't want to have to pay to take it twice.
Right.
So I got a study guide that this guy went through and did. So he outlined all of the chapters. He's got 800 different questions in there for you, but it was a digital version of it. So I found this company in the UK. It was the cheapest one I could find. I sent them the ebook, and they printed it out and spiral bound it for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty cool because I have several ebooks that I'd probably like to do that with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how much did that cost?
$30 with shipping.
Okay. Yeah, it's not too bad.
The turnaround on it was like 10 days, and it came from the UK, so I was happy about it. But then I have 3 more books showing up on Tuesday. One, and it's all NSCA stuff. So it's like one book is just all on testing. One book is all on program design, and one's all on nutrition. Again, I feel like I'm going way over and above what I need to, but I mean, there's got to be something that I'm going to take away from it and make me a little bit better and serve my kids a little bit more. So there's all that. But I've been really happy. And, we recently did our reading episode, and I've really stepped my game up, mainly out of necessity. But I finished a book entirely devoted to speed and agility, which, again, it was 300 pages. I think it seemed like a bit much. I will say this. It was really well done because then they broke it down, and specific coaches like known for like wrestling or football or lacrosse, gymnastics gave their programs. I did it in 3 days. Like, I was really happy about that. I guess my other one's not sitting here, but it's a new one that I got, and I guess I can tell this story a little bit anyways because we got to fill some time here. On Monday of last week, I went to, and if you guys follow me on Instagram, at Coach Hicks CPT, I think. I'll change that to CSCS like everybody else does once I pass my exam.
There you go.
If you follow me on there, you'll see last Monday I went to Akron Hoban, Division II state champs in football for the past 4 years. Definitely going to win the 5th one this year. Their tight end has already committed to Alabama.
Roll Tide.
I forget where the quarterback, maybe Stanford, I think. I met their offensive lineman. He was a senior this year. He's going to Michigan next year to play. Running back, who's a sophomore. Ohio State's already interested in him. Private school, obviously. But their strength and conditioning coach, he graduated from Akron. Then he was a GA there. Went and worked for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Then later went and worked for the Cleveland Indians. Then wanted to get married, so professional baseball is not conducive for a healthy family life, I would guess. So that was when he came back home and got the job at Archbishop Hogan. So I sent him an email, and he let me come up, and I got to hang out, watched the lacrosse team, cross-country team, football team, all those guys train in their $6 million facility, sponsored by Muscle Milk, Under Armour, all this stuff. I think they were ranked seventh or ninth nationally this year for football. But 2 things that I want to say about that. One is, like, I go into these situations and I put these guys up on pedestals and think, man, they know so much more than me. They're doing so much better than me. And you go and you watch and you're like, we're all doing the same thing. Or if you're relatively good, or you have somewhat of an understanding, which I don't want it to sound egotistical, but I think I have a deeper understanding of most of this than like your average Joe.
Right.
As I would say you do as well. But to see that, it kind of validates what I'm doing and what some other people are doing and things like that. And that was the conversation that we had. And he said, no, I told him I didn't want to like downplay anything that he was doing, but it's like, I feel good. Like, I'm on the right path. It's just that, you have a $6 million facility and your storage closet is worth more than my entire weight room.
Right.
But I had 2 pages worth of questions that I wanted to ask him. And I mean, he was great. He sat with the whole time, answered everything. And I said, can you recommend any books that are like outside of strength and conditioning? Right. Because obviously I have enough that I need to get through when it comes to squats and designing programs and shit like that. And he recommended Inside Out Coaching. Have you heard of this? And I'm going to say the guy's name wrong. Joe Ehrman, I believe. Or he played college ball at Syracuse back in the 70s, and then went on and played with the Baltimore Colts for 13 seasons. And dude, the story is incredible. Got raped when he was 12, abusive father, all this stuff. I'm about halfway through it, but it's kind of his coaching philosophy and how he kind of mentors young men and women. And, you know, he got out of the NFL and started coaching Pop Warner football, and then went into high schools and stuff like that. So really incredible story. But tell you all of this to kind of pat myself on the back. I started reading it last night, and I'm about halfway done. I should finish it tonight. But I think it's one of those things where I wasn't always a very good reader. And actually, the majority of my life, I wasn't. And now it's like, because I have so much that I have to get through, I think it's just like training, you know, outside of somebody with legitimate handicap or disability, you know, if you're dyslexic or something like that. That's completely different. But if you're of average intelligence, you know, and you got your high school, maybe an undergrad, something like that, I mean, you can become a very good reader by just doing it more. You know, it's just like squatting. You're going to get better at squatting. So I don't think I'm anything special. I'm using some tactics that I've learned, you know, through different courses and things like that I've done. But I was kind of blown away when I stopped and I looked back at everything that I've gotten through, maybe in the past month or even 3 weeks. I'm pretty happy about it. So, and that's also contributing to me, you know, kind of staying on task and getting through, you know, my masters and stuff like that. So it's all good stuff.
So here's a question for you. Do you consider your college textbooks a version of progressive overload in reading training? I was thinking of how do you do progressive overload in reading?
Here's what and let me just be the big dick in the locker room right now. I don't know if we can say that on here. Maybe I'll edit that out later. But I would call, and I'm trying to remember the term and make sure it's correct before I start spitting it out here. I would call my college reading my PAP, post activation training, to where I go through and I'm doing my squats first, and then I go over and do my box jumps, reading, you know, Homer or whatever it is. So like getting through this stupid book, do I really have to teach reading? That's doing some squats, and then reading, you know, inside out coaching is box jumps afterwards. So that's what I would equate it to. Some shop talk there to let everybody know that I'm really learning something. So yeah, that's what I would think. But what would you say to that? I mean, are you of that belief that anybody can kind of get better, that anybody can really learn anything if you just have the discipline, make yourself sit down and do it?
Yes, I'm a firm believer that there isn't a whole lot differentiating the, you know, probably top 1% and the top 24%. If you're going there, there's probably not a ton differentiating it other than effort and focus being put in, because those are really the only two things that matter. If you have relentless focus and uncontrollable effort, you're going to succeed at whatever you choose to. But the ability to put yourself in the mindset to act on that, you know, that relentless effort and constant dedication to it, that's something that is for like the super elite. But if you just want to be very good at something like you are with reading right now, it takes some effort for sure, takes some dedication for sure, but it's not something that a normal person can't do.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, there's things that are going to take you longer. There's things that won't take you as long. So like, not quite finished with it yet, but this one here, Legacy, about the All Blacks rugby team, fairly easy read. And I put it off when I need, you know, we call them brain breaks for kindergarten, first, second grade. You know, we'll hammer them with something, and then we'll watch a Baby Shark video just to give them a break. You know, so it's like I'll work through 10 pages of this periodization book because of the terminology and shit like that. I'm going to have to look it up, and I can't pronounce words and stuff like that. I'll work through 10 pages of that, and at nighttime, maybe I'll read, you know, something about leadership or I got another one that I'm working through on Vince Lombardi. It's kind of fun and something that really you can just, I don't want to say turn your brain off, but you can just kind of go through and enjoy it. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's things that are going to be harder, and I would get kind of frustrated, working through some things, because it's like, Jesus, I've been at this for 45 minutes and I've gotten through 10 pages or whatever. But that's all right. Like, just don't put that pressure on yourself. Sit down, take the time, make the time. Say, hey, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes uninterrupted. Go to a quiet place, because I found myself before, like, I would try to sit in the family room while the kids are watching something stupid on TV. Even though I'm not interested in that show or whatever, I'd find myself looking up just because it's there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not retain anything. I got my little man cave down here, even though it's not as good as the original. I got a little chair. I go and I sit in that. I set my for the, what do we call that? The Pomodoro technique, where it's so many minutes on. Yeah. And I do 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So 20 minutes, I don't touch my phone. I'm just focused on the reading. I have a pencil or a highlighter working through stuff. And then when the timer goes off, I can mindlessly scroll through Instagram. As soon as it goes off again, I'll work through 3 cycles, which gives me an hour, and it's shocking at how much you can get through. So, and I am nothing special. Like, if you guys knew my ACT scores, you'd be shocked. So I'm nothing special. I've just found ways that work for me, and I'm disciplined about the time management. So, yeah, a little rant for the day about that. But anything else, man, you want to add before we switch gears here a little bit?
Oh, let's see. I don't think so. It has been a while. I'm feeling for the people in Missouri. Those floods were absolutely brutal. I know that was happening when I was there, and it's crazy to see everyone banding together and everyone just kind of shrugging their shoulders and accepting it as a everyday part of life. Like, yeah, every couple of years we're going to get floods.
Yeah.
But the community seemed strong. Everyone that owned property on high ground was kind of harboring stuff for the people that were on a little bit lower ground, and cool to see people get together that way, just because it's such a small community. Everyone knows each other and everyone's looking out for each other. So hoping everything dries out there sooner rather than later, and everyone gets through it.
Yep. So I don't think I've had the chance to talk to you, and I don't want to take up too much more time. Since your trip, didn't look like you had the bag ip you were hoping for.
I brought a lot of ammunition back with me.
Okay.
Let's leave it there. I brought a lot of ammo back with me.
Still have a good time?
Yeah, it was a good time.
Well, that's all that matters. So, all right, guys. We've got a fun one coming up here. We're going to talk about the big 3 lifts. I assume we're going to get into technique and tips, and I don't know if there's any tricks to them, but I'll see what I can come up with, and I'm sure Ben's got some for us. So this was requested a while back. We're finally getting to it, so stay with us, guys. We'll be right back. All right, Ben, and you told me about this one a few weeks ago, and we've just had so much going on that we haven't gotten around to it. But this is going to be fun because it's something that I enjoy talking about, and I could definitely, sitting here looking at this book, talk about the periodization that you should be using as you progress through your squats for the next 16 weeks. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about setup, technique, execution, and things like that. But I'm not real sure because you fielded this question, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, we're just getting into it. This was brought up by Joseph Click. I think he's down in Texas. A longtime listener. Appreciate the questions. And he was just discussing that for himself. He knows, the basics of coaching, but not having that outside viewer, he's having a little difficulty with his own squats specifically, but just opening up to the broader range of the big 3 lifts. That's bench, squat, and deadlift. If we haven't said that, and if people don't know what we're talking about, just wanted the the basic setup, the basic progression through, what can we look for? What should we be ready to feel, ready to go through when we're doing these lifts, and how do you execute them properly? Then maybe we can go on a little later. If you're at a plateau with any of these, what do you do from there? And that's where we can use your big brain.
Oh, I just have a big head. It's not a real big brain. Which one? What do you want to get into first here?
So do you want to, let's go with the how much you bench, bro.
Okay.
Our resident bench expert. Adam Hicks.
Like I always like to hammer home here, I had a lot of success in the bench press despite myself, in spite of what I was doing. Knowing a little bit more now, the first thing I really try to coach with student athletes or Gen Pop, if I have them doing a bench press, is their setup and where I want their eyes in accordance to where the bar is at. So I always like to have your eyes right about even with the bar when you're lying underneath it, just because I see so many beginners or even highly trained athletes throwing that bar back, hitting the rack, and then screwing everything up from that. So for me, that's always the most important thing to do from the get-go, is to make sure that we are set up correctly when it comes to unracking the bar and not hitting everything. Have somebody there to help you hand off. And I guess this depends on the weights that you're using and stuff like that. I always used somebody handing off to me, a spotter in that regards. You should always have a spotter regardless, but I always like to have somebody handing off to me. I didn't want to waste a lot of energy doing that, but that's also from my perma bulk days where I didn't want to, use extra calories doing anything like walking to the floor or something like that. So, but I'm going to talk specifically to Joe here because he's the one that asked the question, and I'm assuming that, he wants to bench as much as he can. Have somebody hand off to you. Don't waste your energy. It always hurt my shoulders when I try to hand off to myself, stuff like that. So, eyes even with the bar, somebody hands off to you. But even before that, my competition grip, I had my index fingers around the dummy marks, squeeze the shit out of the bar, right? I want all those muscles in the forearms engaging, things like that. It's going to make it feel a little bit lighter. Something that I always had a hard time doing, and this is getting into some intricacies here with powerlifting, is try to bend the bar. So, and I can demonstrate here on video if it looks okay, Ben, you'll have to let me know because I can't see everything here.
Got it.
But I put the bar, so we're out here is how I would think about it, and then trying to bend the bar this way so I can get my lats to engage. Okay.
So you are supinating your hands.
Yes. So I'm out here, and I would practice with a PVC pipe or something like that, just trying to learn this and everything. Holding that bar out, bending the bar, getting the back engaged, and then chest up. Mm-hmm. Big chest. I want that chest driving up to the ceiling. Keeping the chest up, back tight. Everything else, I'm squeezing everything as hard as I can. Pulling my feet back as far as I can. Squeezing my butt because I always had a really bad habit of lifting my butt up when I would be in competition, and that's a red light. So I'm squeezing my butt, my feet are pulled back, bending the bar, so my back's engaged, my chest is up, I got the bar path. Should kind of take care of itself at that point if you have everything engaged. Hard part is staying tight as you're coming down. So big air at the top, squeeze, 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 squeeze. And for me, and we can kind of get into nuances here between bodybuilding, powerlifting, athletic development, whatever you want. I'm talking strict powerlifting here for Joe because I think he wants to get strong. I'm tucking my elbows as tight as I can, driving my elbows to the wall in front of me. All right, so that kind of comes from bending the bar, and I'm sorry I'm getting excited here. I'm pulling away from the microphone because I'm talking about bench press, but we're bending that bar. I got the elbows and the shoulders externally rotated, tucking, kind of touching right here on the sternum, getting there. Nice little pause. Everything's tight, blowing the bar back towards the rack. You're not going to hit the rack because you set up correctly. When we got started, your eyes are underneath the bar. You're going to be fine. 3 white lights. Let's move on.
Well, there we go.
Anything else, buddy? You're the science guy. Tell me your thoughts.
I'll just back up away from the powerlifting portion of the gym and talk to the average person here. You brought up some good points that I think are applicable for everyone. If you're trying to get the heaviest bench of your life, or if you're just trying to safely bench, getting your eyes under the bar to start is a very good starting position. I think a lot of people, they have maybe the crown of their head under the bar to start, and you end up pulling it over your entire face. And even if you're not concerned about wasting the 3 calories like some hosts of this podcast are, or have been in the past, you have to, you are using a little extra energy, and you do have to use a little extra coordination there. That if you don't do that, it's going to be safer. It's going to be healthier. You brought up a few things like squeezing your shoulder blades together that I think normal people that just start benching forget to do. And this is applicable on bench press, dumbbell shoulder press, flies to a certain extent, even though I don't like doing flies for other reasons. But these big chest exercises is, if you can pull your shoulder blades back, creates tension in your chest automatically, which is going to give you extra tension to use on the concentric side of things and a little extra help on the eccentric. So those are great. Having your feet at a comfortable position, I think in your bodybuilding experience, you guys really get twisted up in the bench and try to get as compact as possible. If you're laying on the bench, for me, feet are dangling below your knees 90 degrees. You're at a comfortable width apart where you're going to have stability. I'm not really dealing with people on a daily basis where I have to explain leg drive during a bench. So for general population, I wouldn't even worry about the lower half of your body beyond, am I stable and am I in a relatively comfortable position? Beyond those two things where we're working into that higher level, like, hey, I'm getting ready for a 700-pound bench, and not to brag, but I did 375. Felt pretty good about that.
As you should.
Yeah, but it's it's all based off those simple things. Hand placement, it's going to be varied depending on what you want to do. I think your ring fingers on those rings, or your index fingers on the rings, fairly wide for most people. If you have longer arms, that makes sense. But if you're going for a standard bench, going through a larger range of motion is going to be more beneficial to you. In the powerlifting thing, I get it. You're trying to split your arms out wide, go the shortest range of motion possible so you don't have to move the weight that far, which means yeah, exactly. It takes less strength, all that good stuff. And that makes sense. But for people that are just trying to do this for, hey, I want to get my set of 8 to 12. We're doing 3 by 8 to 12. For those people, get it to a width slightly wider than your shoulders, wherever that happens to be on the bar. Just remember that you can use your thumbs as reference off the center line, or your pinkies as reference on those dummy rings. I'm always a ring finger on the rings guy, just where my arms fall. But that's going to be a personal preference. And beyond that, yeah, just bring the bar down to the lower part of your sternum. I know a lot of people have the tendency when they first start benching to just hit it mid-chest, a little bit higher than the nipple line. That's not great. You got to go lower. You can drive more from there. And that's when you're more compact and more powerful. So those few things to keep in mind too. The elbows being tight, I do like that. It's a safer spot for your shoulders, and it's going to engage more of your pec muscles. If we're thinking about this, now we're going to go super anatomy wise, but there are two portions of your pectoralis major. There is the clavicular portion and the sternal portion. This is where the muscle fibers originate. So there are some that originate on the sternum. There are some that originate on the clavicle or the collarbone, and they attach to your humerus. So if you go super high elbows where your elbows are at 90 degrees with your body, you're only going to be getting the clavicular portion for the most part. If you go super, super tight, you're going to get a lot of that sternal portion. If you go towards the middle, you get both of those, you get a bigger bench that way. And it's just going to be safer for your shoulders, more controllable. And overall, you're going to do it healthy, you're going to do it safe, you're going to do it smart, and that's what we're all about.
One other thing that kind of just came to me, and it mainly because I see it so often in high school athletes, is sitting the bar up here on your calluses, and then put that wrist in a bad position. I like to keep it just above that meaty portion. And if you guys check the video out, you can see what I'm pointing to here. Try to keep it in line with the wrist in line with the elbows, so on and so forth. It's just better. It's safer that way. And please, for the love of God, stop with the suicide grip. And if you don't know what that means, it's exactly what it sounds like. But it's wrapping the thumb over top of the bar rather than closing it around the bar. Hold on to that, because I've seen in my lifetime, I've seen 4 guys drop a bar on them, and one guy 700 plus, and it was so hard it bent the bar. Like Texas, this was not a cheap bar either. This was in a powerlifting meet. I cringe just whenever I see, and I see it a lot in high school athletes, especially guys. I don't know if it's some ego thing where they rap and they're banging out their warm-up sets. It's stupid. Take your warm-ups seriously, man. I mean, they should be as controlled as your normal lifts. Do everything the same. It's when we're coaching football, when we're coaching wrestling, whatever it might be. I mean, it's not like we go out there and we run the first couple plays different because those are your warm-up plays. It's all the same. It's all repetition. It's that muscle memory and feeling how the groove and everything like that. But bar placement's big, and especially because with today's society, I think, and I'm going out on the limb here. But
I was going to say we're going to get philosophical about the bench press. This is what I'm in it for.
It's the compromised wrist positions everybody is in because there's so many people in office settings. Thinking of my wife and stuff like that, and my dad has had carpal tunnel surgery, and my father-in-law and everything like that. And it scares me because I like to play guitar, and I know you do too, Ben. So it's like, let's not add unneeded stress to that wrist and things like that. So squeeze that bar, make sure the bar is where it needs to be in your hands, knuckles up, and drive it through the ceiling. So anything else?
No, there we go.
Okay. Going on squat?
Sure. That's the second one that people try.
Yeah. You want me to go first?
Yeah, obviously you are in the thick of it. I'm rusty. Once we start knocking these ideas around, I'll definitely contribute here and say something smart just to outshine you and make me look really good.
Everybody knows you're the smart one here, but okay. So I will take you through the squat just the same way I would coach a high school athlete through it. And I would tell you, don't start with the bar. Start with PVC pipe. Start with a dowel rod. Don't load the spine yet until you've been doing that for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe with some goblet squats or with some dumbbell front squats, stuff like that. Learn the mechanics. Don't load the spine right off the bat when you don't know what you're doing. And I would also say, man, hire somebody if you can, just for like 3 weeks or a month or something. Hire somebody that knows what they're doing. Not just some asshole off of Instagram that can coach you and cue you properly so you can learn about this correctly. Because there's a lot that's going to go into the squat that I've only recently learned, probably in the last 18 months, that I wish I would have known. Same way with the bench press, but I wish I would have known this, 20 years ago when I was in high school, because I probably wouldn't have had 10 weeks off because of hernia surgery and stuff like that. There's a lot that goes on and that we can get into with your feet, your toes, your breathing, your bracing, zipping up the spine, as I like to call it, that I stole from Ed Cohn. Bar placement, elbows, lats, all these things that we can't cover in 20 minutes. So if you can get somebody, or you're lucky enough to be around somebody that's knowledgeable with this, man, reach out. And I'm going to tell you this, like, if you just ask somebody, if you don't want to hire someone, if you ask somebody that knows what they're doing and they're not a piece of shit human, they're probably going to help you, because they're like me and they're like Ben, where this stuff excites you and you like to talk about it, you like to share your knowledge and pay it forward. So reach out to somebody. First and foremost, man, don't load the spine. Don't get under the bar if you're new to the gym for 4, maybe 6 weeks. I would say 6 weeks. Don't be in a hurry, all right? Because you hurt yourself and then you're out for however long, or you just quit in general. There's no reason for it. So let's say that you have a dowel rod and you set that up, or a broomstick or whatever. My first step is always grip the bar, and I put my first fingers, my pointer fingers, around the dummy marks, and then I kind of pull myself under and get that bar placement just almost to the top of the scapula there. I like to keep it I don't want it up on your neck, and I don't want it all the way down to put the shoulders in a bad position. So right about the top of the scapula. So let's work top down here. I'm going to, can I use technical terms and say retract the scapula and pull your shoulder blades together? And here's the cue that I give to high school kids. Imagine you got your dad's credit card in between your shoulder blades, and if you drop it, you can't use it. Okay? So pull your shoulder blades together and hold on to that credit card. Pull your elbows down underneath the bar. That's where I like them. Okay. And then we're, again, like if we're talking powerlifting or, athletic strength, whatever, I want the lats tight. I want us to try to break that bar. Okay. So we're getting back engaged there now. And now I'm going to get all cranked up because I'm acting like I'm squatting, Ben. Jesus. So the back height. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I like to take 3 or 4 deep breaths, breathing in and out. Breathing in and out, all right? Big breath in, okay? I'm going to hold that, and then let's talk about breathing for a little bit, because I never really understood the importance of this until I had 2 softball-sized hernias on either side of my no-no area, okay? So 360 breathing. Fill it all up, all right? I want all that oxygen all the way to my back. Fill that all up. Imagine looking at your belly, looking at your back, and all that is expanding, okay? Big breath in, and then from kind of the bottom of your neck right here at the Adam's apple to the sternum, I imagine that as like a piston or a press in a factory, and then I clamp down on it like somebody's going to punch me, okay? So big breath in, clamp down, then we unrack the bar, okay? All of that bullshit just to unrack the bar. And then I tell my kids, I want your feet in position. I want you out of the rack in 2 steps. So that's right, left. Okay. Maybe you got to shift around. Maybe you got to point your feet out. That's really going to depend on, anatomical things that is pretty unique to everybody else. So if you got a quality coach, he can kind of look and see, okay, here's where the knee's going. Here's our shin angle, stuff like that. Maybe let's shoot this out. Maybe let's bring that in a little bit. Okay. That's where it pays to have somebody that has been doing it for a while, that has that eye. In general, we can say a little wider than shoulder width. Okay. I guess if I've got a big group of kids, let's say like 60 kids plus, I'm going to have them do a couple vertical jumps, look at where their feet land, maybe spread their feet out a couple inches from that, maybe not even that. And that's where we're going to start. Okay. So we're going to try to feel that. So that's where I want feet. And I want it in 2 steps, because when we start getting into heavier weights, man, I don't want you. So many people have the tendency to unrack this bar. Whoops. Sorry about that. I don't want you taking 4, 5, 6 steps coming out of the rack. Okay. And then we also have the tendency when we do that, when we're taking multiple steps, we're getting away from those safety arms. Right. And if something would happen and we would dump that bar, we want those arms there to help us, because we should have 3 spotters. We should have one on the right, one on the left, one in the back. But sometimes in the weight room at Planet Fitness, wherever you might be, you don't have that. So use what you have available. Make sure you understand the equipment. Those arms are there for a reason. So we take 2 steps out. Okay. Now, the first thing I want my kids thinking about, I don't want you breaking at the knees. So this is going to be kind of hard for me to explain. So if you need to jump in here, Ben, and and drag me out of the mud, that's totally fine. I want you to hinge at the hips. I want you to start pushing your butt back towards the opposite wall, and the knees will follow. And the reason I like that is because we're going to keep more of that vertical shin angle. We're going to keep the knees stacked over the ankles. Knees are still going to come forward a little bit. That's fine depending on the height of your athlete, your client, you, whatever. Okay, let's not go crazy there. It's going to happen a little bit, and it's all so different for everybody. Again, takes me back to my first point. If you can have somebody there that knows what they're doing, they can help you and say, hey, you look pretty good. So we're pushing the butt back. Knees are going to follow. Knees are going to start to break. We're going to come down to at parallel or just above, okay? I'm not some crazy psychopath when it comes to break parallel, ass to grass. You got to hit this depth or whatever, because we're talking primarily gen pop or athletes that I'm working with, and very few athletic events take place below parallel. So anybody that says contrary to that, you're an idiot. You need to read a book. I've got plenty if you need to borrow. So we're pushing the butt back. We're hinging at the hips, right? We get down to parallel. And I also give the cue, push the knees out, because I work with a lot of female athletes, okay? When females come into puberty and they start to develop a little bit more of that Q shape, what is it? Like the femur attaches to the hip like 15 degrees, blah, 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 something.
Right.
It's something
different. 12 to 15 degrees different than a male's, and the
femoral
head attaches in the acetabulum in a different way. Moral of the story, there are anatomical differences at the hips between men and women if you haven't figured that out already.
Yes. And why is that? Because girls have babies and we don't. Okay. But that's also why we see such a high occurrence of ACL injuries in our female athletes, soccer, volleyball, and gymnastics. So because of the way that the femur attaches to the hip, so on and so forth. And I see it a ton in males as well, just because they're sitting for so long at school, and then they're sitting when they get home. So they don't have the glute, the hip, the hamstring strength. So when we start to come up, what happens? Those knees collapse. We don't want to see that. So I'm constantly saying, push the knees out, push the knees out. And even if you think you're over-exaggerating it in your mind, probably not, okay?
Right.
So just think about that cue. Another one that I'll give to kind of my more senior level clients or athletes is twist the floor apart. And if we need to demonstrate this, think about standing on a towel, okay? And your feet are straight apart, and then you're trying to twist the towel or spread it out with your feet to kind of turn on your glutes and stuff like that. That's a little bit more in depth for kind of powerlifting and stuff like that, and kind of getting into gear talk and things like that. But it's a good one to think about, because I think it helps keep our kids driving the knees out and keeping the knees in a good position. So where was I at? We're parallel at this point, right?
Right.
So we hit parallel. I'm going to talk about stretch shortening and stuff like that, but I don't think we don't really need to get into that. So staying braced, keeping the piston fired down on the core, and we're going to push the floor apart, drive the knees out, stand back up with it, drive the hips through. Think about humping the air, squeezing your butt, bringing that through. Kind of lost my train of thought, so I feel like I was doing really good, and I kind of went down some rabbit holes. But I think that's kind of the big where I see the most malfunctions or screw ups is unracking the weight and then breaking the knees first, not driving the hips back. Which I also think, we've never had our conversation about box squats and stuff like that, but I think that's a benefit to the box squat also, is teaching you how to kind of reach and get the butt back a little bit more, keep you in a little bit safer position. Helps me teach the squat a little bit more. But yeah, I think that just about covers it for me. I mean, like I said, there's so many intricacies and ins and outs, especially when you start dealing with, a 5, 6, 7, 800 pound squatter and stuff like that. I don't think that's what we need to cover right now. If it is something you're interested, more than happy to talk about it. And we can get other guys on here that know a lot more about it as well. And we can spend a whole episode talking about squats if that's what you want. But for the most part, for general population, pay attention to where your knees are at. And I would say it's almost tied. For me, in my experience, and from what I had to go through, breathing is almost, to me, the most important thing when it comes to the squat, because there's just so much pressure and there's only a couple places it can go, and you don't want to go in the wrong way. So, yeah, I think with that, I'll kind of toss it over to you and I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, you did a very good job. I won't add too much to it because that's a ton of information to pick apart. But for the knee thing, knees coming into the middle, very common in modern general population. To accommodate this or to activate your glutes, if you can't think about twisting a towel between your feet to activate your glutes, use a mini band. Most gyms have mini bands. They're just elastic bands, probably like 12 inches wide or like 12-inch circle. Put that above your knee and it will force your glutes to activate to push it out. It seems counterintuitive to have something pulling your legs towards the middle, but your body will react to that by pushing against it and getting your knees in line. That's going to be a huge thing, and it helps if you're just trying to go through the motions and strengthen your glutes as well. It's something that is easy to do. You don't really need to think about it that much, but you're going to activate your glute medius, glute mins, and just stay in that proper position without your knees caving in. As far as foot placement goes, I know that's a huge thing that we struggle with all the time. My biggest tip, if you're questioning where your foot placement should be, stick one hand on the bar or one hand on the rack itself and just get in as low of a squat as you can. So you'll have to shift your feet around at the bottom, shimmy back and forth. You should be able to find a relatively comfortable spot at the bottom in a natural squat stance that is just your baseline. I know there are a few different ways of finding where your foot placement should be, where your hips should be. That's my favorite because you can do it on your own and you can figure out through trial and error in a very safe format where you are comfortable. So if you don't want to do the vertical jump thing like Adam has, because you don't have someone looking for you, you don't have someone videotaping, whatever it may be, just test it out a little bit. Find any solid object that can keep you upright. Sit down in as low of a squat as you can and shift your feet around until you're in a comfortable position. You can change your toe angles there. You can sit at the bottom of your squat and figure out where your hips are most comfortable, where your femurs are most comfortable, where your ankles are working, where you're back on your heels, in, again, a very safe and controlled environment where you don't need to be too nervous that something's going to go wrong. Then third, don't be afraid to stick your butt out. Like you said, sticking your butt out, especially on box squats, it's a great cueing thing to think about because I think people do have the tendency to break at the knees first, like you were saying. And sticking your butt out is going to be good. It'll keep you back on your heels. It'll keep you driving through the floor properly, and it will keep you in a safe position for those of us that are not squatting tremendous amounts of weight. It's just those basic things to keep in mind where, we're not trying to hit a world record. We're not, maybe even not trying to hit depth. We're just trying to get some weight on a bar, squat under comfortably, and get used to that motion. So those three things are my tips.
And let me ask you, and I'll tell you mine first, because I think people have the tendency to think that I rely on you, which I do. I highly respect your knowledge. But foot placement when it comes to like what direction the toes are going in, I like them just slightly turned out. And again, it depends on the kid, and you can kind of look and see where the hips are going and the knees and stuff like that. I don't usually want them straight forward, so just maybe a slight twist, not too crazy. What's your thoughts on that, and what would you tell people?
Mine, in my mind, it's very dependent on where the femur is. So I'd take a straight line through the femur, out past the toes, and your toes should be roughly in line with that femur, give or take. like maybe 10 degrees externally rotated from that. If you're in a pretty wide stance, if you have hips that want to go wide, you're definitely not going to keep your toes pointed forward. You don't want to be internally rotated. That's going to put a lot of stress on the middle of your knee that you just don't need. So I try to think of it as, keeping it in line with your femur. If you take a straight shot down the thigh, that is roughly where your toes should land. And I think that's good for a lot of people where, again, you might not have a spotter, you might not have someone looking out for you. It's going to be something that we can all find ourselves, and it's going to be, again, broad brush, best for the most people.
So it's really going to depend on how the hips are opening up for most people.
Right.
And so we're going to get into some weeds here, but I'm just curious because I recently came across this and I didn't know what to think about it. I bookmarked it so I could send it to you later. Have you read anything about maybe if you have the feet opened up too wide or the hips open up too wide, you're actually using less of the glute?
No, I haven't. Is it going to be more quad dependent at that point because you're just extending the knee?
Yes. That's what I read.
I could see that.
And again, it was so in depth, like it was way over my pay scale, so I need to revisit it, but it was like quick on my lunch break. Okay, students are coming back. What the hell is this? Bookmark that. But I wanted to make sure that I brought it up to see if you knew anything about it. Yeah, it kind of makes sense to think about.
Right, because the glutes aren't designed to work in the frontal plane.
Mm-hmm.
Glutes are, for the most part, they're sagittal plane and coronal plane, but that's beside the point. If we're working at the meds and mins, those are for rotation. The glute major is for extension of the hip. So if we're thinking about it in that way, if you externally rotate your toes too much, you're not going to be using your glutes for anything they're not going to be as effective at hip extension as they would be if your toes were more internally, I don't want to say internally rotated because you don't want to internally rotate your toes. Yeah. Not as severely externally rotated.
Yes.
So yes, that's definitely something we could get into the weeds with. I'm sure there are a lot of biomechanics involved there, and I'm sure all four of the people that are extremely interested in biomechanics that are listening would love the conversation. But it does make a lot of sense when you're opening up that wide. It essentially turns into a sumo squat, a sumo style squat, and you're taking hip flexion completely out of it at that point, or at least that's what it seems to be designed to do.
Yeah.
And if you want to compensate with your super ripped quads and not squat properly, more power to you, but I think you're probably going to end up putting a lot more unnecessary stress on the knees just because of that strange rotation. I don't think that, let's air this out. Humans aren't supposed to be actually loaded that much. Yes, we can. We can definitely do it, but we are not supposed to be actually loaded with 900 pounds of weight.
No.
Even like 500. It's absurd the weights people can put up, but these small ligaments, all the small attachments in the body, your quads are banging, your glutes are sick, you're getting a lot of likes on your Instagram picture with 3 peach emojis because your booty's popping, and you can squat a lot. But the things we need to worry about are, okay, what's the torsion on the knee? What kind of internal forces are we dealing with that we don't have measurements for, we can't see easily? It's things like that where we need to be smarter in this so you can squat for a long time.
Yeah. And I mean, if we take it to the high school athlete or whatever, two things I wanted to bring up before we switch, because I'm going to have to bolt. That was Mrs. calling me, and I got to I'll explain that later, but I got 10 things I got to attend to. 2 things. One, when we're talking about high school athletes, or maybe even it's you training for your Tough Mudder or whatever it might be. We spend all this time training to get fast, to get really strong, and we do not spend enough time learning how to slow down and stop. And that's usually 99% of the time when injuries occur.
Okay. Very good point.
So something to think about there. And especially if I think there's some other coaches that listen to this, really need to spend some time thinking about that. Think about the hamstring and where, the hamstring's covered in the hip and the knee. We use that a lot when we stop. Okay. So let's focus on that a little bit. 2, when I was at Hoban, what I was talking about in the intro, and I talked about some of these kids that were committed to D1, Big Ten schools, stuff like that. One common factor that I saw just looking at these kids, all right, height changed, size changed. Every single one of them had a big butt. Okay, so glutes are pretty important when it comes to athletic performance. So something to think about there. I know we're kind of getting into some nuances and things like that, but I think also when we think about training athletes and stuff like that, there's still a lot of carryover when it comes to everyday life and movements that you're doing and things like that. So if you can kind of look at the way an athlete trains, but then adapt it for your needs or your ability level at this point, it's going to serve you pretty well. But let me stress again, if you are new to this, if it's your first time going to the gym, you should not be under a bar. I don't care if it's 15, 45 pounds, whatever. It should be PVC pipe. It should be a dowel rod. You should be learning the movements. Another thing I really like to do with my kids, if we're having a hell of a time, teaching them how to hinge at the hips. And when I say that, it's pushing your butt back. I'll have them stand in front of a wall, okay, so with their nose maybe 2 inches away from the wall, toes 2 inches away from the wall. I'll put the dowel rod on their back, have them squat down. Your nose and your knees can't touch the wall. That'll teach you how to push your butt back, teach you how to keep the spine in a relatively good position, and it teaches really good shin angle at that point. So if you can start to do that comfortably, and then back up away from the wall and you're still hitting that, then yeah, you're probably good to go get under a barbell. But there's a lot of things that lead up to that, and it's always safety first for us. So anything else, buddy?
I think we're good on squats.
Okay, deadlifts.
Don't deadlift. It sucks. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I will say this. Your deadlift, I don't think you have to deadlift all the time. I think your squat should train your deadlift. I can think of thinking back to wrestling season, which was almost 20 weeks long, 2 weeks where we actually straight bar deadlifted. Yep. I'm a much bigger fan when it comes to the populations that I'm working with of trap bar deadlift. And I think it's got a lot more carryover to a sprint and movement. When you look at the biomechanics and stuff like that, what do you think about that, Ben?
Yeah, it was, I remember reading an article a few years back about the only deadlift this trainer was doing with professional athletes of all sorts, whether it's Olympic marathon runners, Olympic sprinters, football players, baseball players. The only deadlift he would program is the trap bar deadlift because it's the most, I guess, anatomically appropriate the way you're setting up for it, because it is roughly midline with your feet is where your center of gravity is. It's going to be a fairly common way to generate force, I think, because we're not talking weights in the athletic world. We're not talking about weights in general population. We're talking about force generation. So your force generation should be roughly under your center of mass. What the trap bar deadlift does is it will keep your force generation under your center of mass, whereas the straight bar deadlift, yes, it does look cool because you're like super badass and you're holding the big bar, but It shifts all that weight forward, where in the general population or in everyday life, very rarely will you have weight shifted forward in your body to that extreme amount, or would you desire having that weight that far out in front of you?
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, I can think of 2 times where I had my wrestlers deadlifting. Outside of that, a lot of RDLs, rack pulls, things like that, just that carry over to athletic performance. Now, I mean, Joe's asking us about the big three, so I mean that's great. Like if you want a big deadlift, I'm on board, man. I think that's awesome. I spend a lot of time setting my deadlift up exactly like my squat. So let's just talk conventional. Do you agree, or do you want to get into sumo here?
No, sumo's cheating.
I was waiting on that. I can't sumo anymore. I did. Sumo was the only way I could pull when I was heavy because my belly got in the way, and now I can't do it. So I only pull conventional. So again, I find my stance same way. I jump and see where my feet land, move them out slightly. I am switching currently to a hip hook grip because I'm scared about tearing my bicep, which is just two overhand. Your hands are overhand over the bar, as compared to an alternate grip where I have one underneath and one over top. There's no special reason for that as far as I know, other than to keep the bar from rolling in your hands. So, I mean, squeeze the bar, get in a good position. You shouldn't have that problem. And again, I've seen too many biceps pop off and roll up while guys are deadlifting. So I'm going to a hook grip, which is wrapping the thumb over the bar and then hooking your hands over top of it. It hurts like a son of a bitch if you're not used to it, if you don't have the calluses on your thumbs, but you will get those eventually. So I've switched to that. And so let's think about the setup, all right? Because after that, it's just pulling the shit off the floor. So I always start out, put my hands straight out in front of me. I don't know why. It's something in my head. That's just how I do it. Big breath in. I already have my feet set. Okay, so I like to have, I guess I'm all over the place here, so let me start over. Feet underneath the bar. All right, if you look at your shoes and it's a standard tennis shoe or a Chuck Taylor or something like that, I call them the bunny ears, the loops on your shoestrings. I like to have those underneath the bar. Okay, feet slightly turned out, just like my squat. And I guess I would have to say, like, if I'm thinking about my foot placement for my squat and my deadlift, my feet are in a slightly more than my squat. Okay, shoestrings under the bar. I don't want to be able to see them. My shin is not touching the bar, but it's close. Like the hairs on my leg are probably touching it. I put my hands straight out, big breath in, and then I start pushing my butt back. So I'm hinging back to get down to the bar. As I'm coming down, I'm bringing my hands down. I hook onto the bar. I'm already really tight. Now, there's different schools of thought here. Like there's guys that push the bar away and get set up. I don't seem to need to do that right now. And I think it's because I paid more attention to mobility in my hips and hamstrings and stuff like that. So I can get into a pretty good position just lowering myself down like that. So I've already got my breath taken care of. All right. Big breath in, 360 breathing, clamp down, push that piston down. I'm bracing. I'm down to the bar. My hands are basically shoulder width apart. It kind of depends on, I guess knurling's the same as just on my Texas deadlift bar. There's no knurling in the middle. My hands are on the knurling, my hook grip, and then I start to pull back, pushing through my heels. I'm still twisting in the floor, trying to get my glutes to engage, keeping that breath, coming up, standing, shoulders over the hips over the knees, knees over the ankles, and then slam the bar down just to cause a big scene. But it's one of those things. There's some more nuances that go into the deadlift, maybe. But I think for our conversational purposes right now, if you can master the squat with everything that we told you, you're going to be a pretty good deadlifter, I would think. Like, I don't want to overcomplicate this like I have a tendency of doing. I think the biggest thing is making sure you're not too far away from the bar. Excuse me. So if you're being too far away from the bar, your feet too far back or too far, there's kind of a sweet spot, I think, there. But as far as the deadlift goes, with everything that we gave you with the squat, just pay attention to the breathing. And I think if you use my technique, like I'm saying, and you don't have to put your hands out, like it's just something in my mind. Like it all works together. Like as my butt's going back, it's like a machine, man. Butt's going back and it's pulling my hands down right to the bar, and I'm getting tighter, 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 tighter. I'm there, driving through the heels, pushing the floor away is my big cue with the deadlift. Yeah, I don't know if you can speak more to that than I can, but I think that's kind of where I'm at. I don't use it a whole hell of a lot with my kids right now.
Right, and being that my training was all like athletic based, I haven't really ever deadlifted seriously, so I'm not one to talk here. But what I will add is keep your back straight. You did miss that, but that's, I think, a given. Keep your shoulder blades back. Everything should be in a straight line. Your spine is extremely delicate, and it's not built for loading that way, but we can accommodate it. We can strengthen our back, all that good stuff. Just keep your back straight. If your spine is curling at all, that is your heaviest weight that you get to do. Congratulations, you just maxed out. And secondly, if you're not in competition, use straps. Like, there is no problem using wrist straps on something like a deadlift, especially when an alternate grip does have a high, well, not a high probability, but a higher risk of a bicep tear. There's no need to go through that in a general population. Just buy wrist straps. They're like $14 and use those. The loading will be more on your forearm really than anywhere else. Your grip doesn't have to be as strong, but what it does do is it lets you safely grab that bar, and you don't have to do anything too crazy, so it's a little safer there. And that's, again, what it's all about. If you're going to do these safe, do these right.
100%.
There is inherent risk in lifting big weights, as we've talked about before, but you can mitigate most of this risk if you do it properly.
Yeah, and I am sorry. I should have hammered that home about the spine and the shoulders, chest up. But again, man, it kind of comes back to where it's like if you can teach one thing that's going to have some carryover and give you less to think about, I think that's always obviously a benefit, right? And if you can really master your squat and get that figured out to where you're doing a really good job with that, and you're learning to hinge the hips and do all of those things, it's going to carry over to your deadlift. And with anything that you're doing, I mean, I call it cat back, and I think a lot of people do, but you can imagine like the Halloween cat where it's got that big arc in the back. If you're doing anything where that happens, you like you said, you've reached your max, so you're done for the day. So yeah, the spine should always be of number one importance, and I would say a close second is your breathing technique. So, and there are so many videos and so many people that just strictly study breathing and different ways to train yourself for that. That I would really encourage you. I mean, just a simple search on YouTube, you're gonna learn a lot about that. So, learning how to brace properly is going to save you a lot of heartache in the future.
Yep. And if you don't, just look up what Ronnie Coleman's been up to recently, and you will get a good lesson in why you need to brace properly.
It's sad. Yeah, it's sad. Sad to see. I couldn't even tell you how many surgeries he's had.
I think it was 7.
7? Wow.
7 or 8. Can't feel his legs anymore. Still got good arms because
yes, he does.
Helplessly addicted to lifting weights, but that's beside the point. The point we really want to drive home is just be safe through all these. And if you're listening to this show, you probably got enough sense to like not be, grinding it out, throwing a lot of weight. I think we attract maybe not the smart people, but at least the cognizant people. Because the smart people, the smart people should be hosting the show then. We'll just No, but yeah, we do have a lot of people that at least have a lot of sense to them, enough to ask questions, enough to make sure they're doing it properly, enough to reach out to someone if they need something addressed. That's what I appreciate about all of our listeners is like, hey, we do have this community where, yeah, we want to get better. We want to lift heavy. We want to run fast. We want to do whatever, but we're going to do it smart. And that's what it's all about.
Yep. And it's going to lead to just a better return on your investment because your career is not going to be cut short. So pay attention to those little things in the beginning. Like I said, not loading the spine in the squat. Don't worry about your deadlift until you mastered the squat. I would even say with the bench press, you should be learning your form for a couple of weeks with a PVC pipe or a dowel rod. Learn how to break that bar. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, man, go find us on YouTube because I think I did a pretty good job of lining up with the camera and showing you what I mean. Because for a long time, that cue was lost on me, and you need to get the lats engaged. You need to have the chest up and make sure the hands and the bar placement's where it needs to be. So yes, it takes a little bit longer on the front end, but it's going to give you more years on the back end and more healthier years at that. So those are all very important things. And if we want to get into more nuances on the deadlift and stuff like that, I mean, we can get Nick back on here or somebody that can do a little bit more. But, one of the things that kind of gets hammered home in some of the West Side books and stuff like that, and again, they're using the box squat and everything like that, but one complements the other. So, I mean, if your squat's going up, your deadlift should be going up, right? So yeah, you train smarter, not harder, and then you can do it for many, many years to come. So anything else, buddy? Because I got to get upstairs immediately because all hell's breaking loose. So
yeah, anything else? Longest episode in a while here.
It has been, and I think it was really good stuff. I like getting into the technical stuff and really, I did my best to not go down too many rabbit holes where we could. But if that's what people are into, and I love talking about it, and obviously, like I said, if you guys want to talk about periodization for a few weeks, I'd be happy to. You can turn us on right when you lay down in bed and fall asleep. So if anybody does have those technical questions, feel free to let us know because we're happy to cover them. But got some exciting guests coming up here in the future. You mentioned Mr. Blake Bowman. Gorilla Zen Fitness. We got Michael Fahey coming back at the end of the month, so that'll be a marathon. And I've got my testing May 16th, 17th, and 18th out in Indiana at Indiana University. So I know you're planning on coming out. Might do a little meetup there if anybody is interested in that. And I like these topical ones and kind of getting away. It seems like we've spent a long time hammering home kind of the nutrition and diet side of things, so this is always kind of fun. So anything else, buddy?
No, I think we're good. Thanks again, Joseph, for reaching out to us, and anyone else that wants to reach out, just do it. Like we said, we're accommodating, love answering the questions, and I look forward to hearing from everyone else.
What we should do is cover an episode talking about the Olympic lift so everybody can find out really how much I don't know.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Because those are
again, something I've got just zero training in properly. I should add the asterisk. Like, and I can be the gym bro throwing up a snatch and just looking like hell doing it, but it's going to get up there.
You want to have fun, get a wild hair up your ass and decide that you want to start progressing your wrestlers through some Olympic movements before you get to the off season, and then quickly realize, nah, we don't need to do this. we're good. Let's run, jump, squat.
Cleans are incredibly complicated.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and I have to. That's one of the tests for my master sports performance evaluation is teaching one of the Olympic movements and then regressions, progressions. Where does it break down? Yeah, that's gonna be fun. So,
if you ever
all right, guys.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but. All right, guys, as always, if you have any questions or you want us to get in anything, buildingambition@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook or Instagram. I'm a little bit more active on my own personal account, which is Adam Hicks CPT or Adam_Hicks. I don't know, one of the two. Ben tags me in some stuff. Or you can find at Ben Simanak. Just send all your stuff to Ben. I'm terrible at following through with things. So at Ben Simanak, or hit us up on Facebook. Ben runs the Facebook, does a nice job with it. So with all that, I hope everybody has a great week. Thanks for listening. And yeah, this was a fun one.
Yeah, it was a good time. Definitely a marathon. Hopefully the only marathon I'm involved in for the foreseeable future.
I like it. So, all right, I got to get upstairs. My daughter's nose is bleeding. So I'll see you guys next time. Have a great week. All right, buddy. I've got a jet. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hit me up